I'm Yazz Ahmed. Welcome to my little concert. Thank you to the Hiya Festival for inviting me to play. I'm going to play a composition of mine called Sudori. And Sudori is actually a character from the Epic of Gilgamesh. She is a wise woman in the story. And historians like to think that this beautiful island that she lives on is Bahrain. So I like to think of her as the goddess of the Gulf. So this is Sudori. I hope you enjoy. Cool.
Okay, hello and welcome to this session of Hiya Live Sessions. Thank you very much to Shireen and Natalie for hosting this whole 12-hour marathon of music that is coming our way through the digital airwaves all over, which is hosting some very intimate performances by artists, musicians, and DJs from Southwest Asia and North Africa who are influencing music. With you, Christina Hasboun, and with me is the brilliant British-Bahraini trumpet and flugelhorn player, Yazz Ahmed. Hi, Yazz.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you as well.
Yeah,
Keeping
yeah,
very
hope,
well.
yeah, although from a distance, obviously, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've just seen this wonderful performance that you delivered throughout the Hiya sessions. And before we delve into it, I was going to say, can we start with how you picked up the instrument, the trumpet and the flugelhorn?
Yeah, of course. So, when I moved to London when I was 9 years old, I grew up in Bahrain. So, when my mum and dad they separated, I moved to London with my sisters and my mum, and we were starting at a new school. And my mum said to us, "They're giving musical instrument lessons. Would you like to, learn one?" And I knew that my grandfather played the trumpet, so my mum's dad. And so I, instantly thought, the trumpet, I know what that sounds like. I really like it. And so that was it, really. And my grandfather was obviously very happy. And he gave me my first lesson.
Wow.
And yeah, and it was really special. I played the C major scale in the first lesson. So I was very proud of myself. And I should probably tell you a little bit about my grandfather as
Yes,
well.
I would love to hear that too. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was a jazz trumpet player in the 1950s in London. He played with people like Tubby Hayes, Ronnie Scott, John Dankworth, and then he became a record producer, having enough of the crazy jazz world.
Wow.
And
Wait, is that in the 60s or the 70s?
it was in the 50s, and
50s
then
as well. Wow.
yeah, and then sort of in the 60s and 70s, I think. Yeah, he must have stopped playing maybe in the 60s. Yeah. So he started working with Philips Records, Pi Records, and he produced a lot of records for contemporary UK jazz artists like Graham Collier and Harry Beckett, and also did some more commercial stuff like Bilk. So he's got quite a wide range of people he used to work with. So naturally for me, he was my hero. He shared a lot of music with me, jazz in particular. And so I grew up with these sounds and was already aware, of jazz and classical music. And my mum was a huge reggae fan, so I listened to lots of reggae.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, music was really exposed. We got to hear a lot when we were growing up. But yeah, and then I picked up the trumpet and played at my local youth bands, and we did little tours in Europe, which was really fun. Um, yeah, lots of misbehaving when you're young,
Of course.
drinking illegally.
Oh,
Yeah, you know what kids do. So,
how
and
can
that
you
was
blow the trumpet after that?
oh, it's very good. Only after.
After, okay.
And we used to play in the youth jazz orchestra. This is all in Merton, so South London.
Mhm.
We used to play at Wimbledon tennis every year, entertaining the crowds in the kind of cafe area. And so I used to have the opportunity to sneak into like court number one and centre court and see all the big stars. Yeah, so fun days. And I think, yeah, in my early 20s, I started to explore the flugelhorn. I always knew that it had a beautiful sound, so I was intrigued by this. And I borrowed one and eventually managed to buy one. It took a long time to save up for one. And yeah, and I've loved that instrument, and I keep it as part of my voice. So the trumpet and flugelhorn, they have different tones. So yeah, they're very nice instruments to express how I'm feeling.
Totally, but also they're not very typical instruments for Arabic music. And then you have a piece like Sudori, which is inspired by, I think you did some research in Bahrain for it. And so I was wondering how, so you traveled to Bahrain. Were you exposed to Arabic music at that stage? And one thing that I found out um, just recently is that Bahrain had the first recording studio in the Gulf,
Oh,
audio
yeah, for
wise. So I was
both.
thinking, oh, cool. Yeah, so in terms of Arabic music and quarter tones and incorporating them into these instruments, how did that go?
Yeah. Well, yes, I'd never really heard trumpets played in Arabic music, but there are similarities like the duduk, so like a reed instrument,
It's
which has
Armenian,
got a
maybe.
yeah, yeah, it's got a very nasal, kind of sound.
Mhm.
So I suppose there's some similarities, but I think in more modern music, people use trumpets, especially when you get orchestras, accompanying a big famous singer and that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, so for me, I try to incorporate my jazz background and also my Arabic heritage, so that I can create something that is with the kind of the spirit of and the expressiveness of Arabic music. The vibrato, the inflections, and the kind of very heartfelt sounds that singers get in particular. And then obviously I combined this with kind of jazz phrasing and improvisation and stuff like that. Um, so for me, what has been difficult is trying to play the quarter tones, these very expressive notes that is very common in Arabic music. So they're not used in Western scales, and I have learnt in a Western manner. So it was all a new kind of thing for me to explore. And so I couldn't play these notes very well on my trumpet. So the person who makes my instruments, his name is Lee McKinney of Eclipse Trumpets. He helped me to design a quarter tone flugelhorn, which allowed me to play these blue notes in Arabic music. And so yeah, I wrote some music for this instrument. The first one was for LSO. Well, the LSO, the London Symphony Orchestra, they have a young composers scheme, and I wrote a piece of music for some players and myself. And yeah, it's a great instrument. It's quite hard to play, but yeah, it's like a little bit going towards that real essence of Middle Eastern music.
Cool. And then when you went to Bahrain to research the music of the Pearl Divers, um, how did it sound to you, and how was it for you as a woman to get within that male-dominated environment? Because those songs are performed, I think, only in a male setting. But there's also the wedding songs that you speak about. So if you can um, tell us
Yeah.
about it.
Okay, so I was writing a piece of music called Alhan al Sudori, and that was my suite that was inspired by traditional Bahraini music, so music of the Pearl Divers and the women drumming groups. So I went to Bahrain to do some research, and I met a very nice man called Ahmed El Ghanem, he works at the Ministry of Culture of Bahrain, and he set up this wonderful private concert of the for the Pearl Divers to perform for me and my sister,
Wow.
which was really
Wow.
sweet. And
Yes, a special
yeah,
performance.
it was so kind and lovely because they knew that I was really passionate about learning about my heritage. And so we went to their clubhouse in Maharak, which is actually where my Bahraini family are from. And we sat there, and the men performed all the songs, the famous songs. And yeah, it was beautiful. There was no kind of uncomfortable feeling that this was just a men's group. It was, we were all in there absorbing the music, and it was a, yeah, very special experience. So it didn't feel strange at all. Unfortunately, I missed seeing the women perform, because now this music, this traditional music, is kind of, they don't do pearl diving anymore. It's cultivated, artificially. It's
Mm.
farmed. So, but these old songs are very important in the culture. So you get groups who perform these songs. So there's a women's group, but I didn't get to see them, unfortunately. But maybe next time, that would be really special. I'd love to see the women perform with their frame drums and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. Because this is another thing I wanted to ask you. When you arrive in Bahrain, what sounds do you associate with Bahrain? Like typical
Yeah.
sounds.
For me, it's always I usually arrive at night, so it's really noisy.
Hmm.
Um, Everyone's very friendly. You'll see people meeting each other on the street, families, meeting up with other families, and it's very lively. And there are a lot of parts in Bahrain that are kind of, you could say, party areas. There are lots of restaurants, and people eat outside, and and socialize. And yeah, it's really nice vibe, but yeah, very noisy, lots of traffic as well. But then at in the morning and early afternoon, everything's dead quiet. It's just so quiet. So it's quite a contrast between, yeah, the day and the night. But yeah, I always think of Bahrain being very noisy, but a good noise.
Well, in comparison to even London.
Yeah, it's quieter in the day compared to London, but just as noisy, I think, in the evening.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Um, yeah, because like I was wondering, do you hear the sound of the sea, uh, the like I don't know, the horns in a much more frequent way, maybe?
Yes, definitely
Yeah.
much more frequent. Yeah, I mean, if you go to the seaside, and the desert, it's much quieter, but sometimes you have people camping on the beach, which is
Mm,
really nice. Yeah, it's much quieter when you get out of the big cities. Yeah.
of course, always. Moving on to another topic that you have recently, and very recently actually, touched upon in an article by Edna Martinez, was about women in the jazz scene in London. And you are very active on the jazz scene in London. And since this is a whole festival about women, I was wondering if you could speak about the challenges that you face as a woman in the music industry.
Yes. Well, yes, it's a very complex topic. I think, yeah, I think for me, the problems I have had is lack of visibility. So, for example, when I was learning the trumpet and learning about music, I never saw any women. Never saw women trumpet players on stage. We didn't learn about any women composers. So for me, that really affected my confidence. And I just thought, oh, maybe women don't become jazz musicians or jazz instrumentalists. We know that there are lots of wonderful jazz vocalists. So it just made me think, oh, maybe we're not intelligent enough, or that kind of thing. So I really doubted myself. So if I feel like that, then probably a lot of other young girls or women feel like that as well. The lack of support. So, I eventually did find some role models. Ingrid Jensen is one person that I discovered and realized that I could, become a professional jazz musician. Um, I think one of the how we can solve these problems is for venues and festivals to be more courageous and more imaginative, and to find more female band leaders
Mhm.
to headline shows. What would be wonderful would be, like, let's just say one venue, they booked 50-50 male and female acts. One act would be male, next one would be female, or whatever. So I think that's really important, so that we kind of normalize, seeing women on stage and not thinking that it's a novelty or something really rare.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah, this
yeah,
is something I
exactly.
struggle with in Arabic music, that a lot of really big names like Kulthum are portrayed just as singers, whereas they were amazing oud players or they played other instruments, but we always see them within a certain image. And so it's nice to see this different aspect of women coming out within the media and the mainstream.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I think, yeah, this is one of the major things. I mean, there are lots of other issues, there's still a lot of sexism, and I think a lack of understanding from some people that don't know what we as female performers go through, and the kind of the prejudice we face. So I think it would be wonderful if more men, there are a lot of men who do listen, but there could be more men who could listen and try and understand what we're going through, and to help solve this problem. They're just little things. It's just like, do some research and find out the other female musicians there are out there, because there's loads of them, but a lot of people, they never get a chance to shine because there isn't the support,
Yes.
you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
One thing that you said, and that totally made me think, oh, why did I not think about this before? Is you were talking about jamming and how it gets really competitive. And I think that the energy that is there when there is a jam, I think, can you elaborate on that? Because not many people think about it. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that there are certain dynamics that we might not feel comfortable with.
Mm. Well, when we're learning about jazz from a young age, it's the type of music where, you learn from your mistakes, because there's lots of improvising and you have to, be really confident. And I think, yeah, this is a very complicated one. So I think as young girls growing up, we've always been taught to be a good girl, not take risks. We're kind of constantly, ridiculed, and I think, well, for me anyway, a lot of young girls were scared of making mistakes because we don't want to appear stupid or inferior. We learnt phrases like, "Oh, you throw like a girl," and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Mummy's little girl, and boys, they're sort of phrases like, boys will be boys, you can be naughty and silly, but not allowed for girls.
No.
So this is all, we're growing up with these thoughts in our heads. And then when it comes to something like jazz, where you have to take lots of risks, I think that can really affect one's confidence, and in jam sessions, um, the nature is very competitive. Not all male musicians like that competitive nature, but I think a lot of the time, yeah, women don't like that competitive nature because of, all this learned behavior.
Mhm.
So it can be really off-putting. And I think, I've seen young girls in jam sessions, and when the guys get up and they're like, sort of competing with one another, who can play highest, who can play fastest, loudest. And you can see them shrinking in their bodies because,
Mm,
we can play like that, obviously,
yeah,
but it's quite, it's not, it makes
it's
the
not our
music
way.
less fun.
Yeah,
No, it's not fun. So yeah, that's the thing. I think we have to create, equal spaces. If anyone's being an idiot, just say, "Can you get off stage?"
totally, totally. I think
Yeah,
calling people out, language is so important. This is one thing I'm also, and it's funny because in English you don't actually see that the language that you use does not differentiate between male female that much as in Arabic. But in Arabic, there's a lot of words that just address males
that's right.
within
Yeah,
the music industry, and I think that's one, like, our language and stances need to be changed.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
Okay, moving on to one of your greatest albums, I would say, Polymnia. I think you have, I mean, an array of powerful women on that album. Um, I'm not sure where to start, to be honest. The one that really sticks out in my mind is Ruby Bridges, who was remixed very recently as well. So maybe we can start there.
Yeah, so Ruby Bridges, for those who don't know, she, as a 6-year-old child, desegregated an all-white school in Louisiana. So I was watching this interview that she gave as an adult, and she was recalling, her memories of this day, when her first day at school, and she was escorted by police because there was a crowd of white parents who didn't approve of her going to this school and shouting abuse and spitting at her, and it was a horrible scene. And I think she had to do this every day, actually, be escorted every day. Anyway, very traumatic. But she said, as a child, as a 6-year-old, she was obviously very innocent and had no idea what was going on. She thought it was like a carnival, like Mardi Gras, because all this noise reminded her of, all these celebrations. She didn't realize that all these were threats and nasty comments.
Mm.
And so obviously, I found inspiration in this brave little girl who made a huge difference to, a lot of people's lives, for the better. And so when I came to writing the piece dedicated to her, I thought about this story, and I thought about the music that is featured in Mardi Gras parades. It's quite a mixture of different types of music, like jazz and funk and all sorts of things. And so yeah, I did a lot of research, and I thought I'd incorporate a bit of the kind of New Orleans type jazz in the piece,
Mhm.
as well as combine some sort of more dissonant tones to reflect the evil menace, of racism and injustice. So you get a sort of, it's quite an innocent sounding melody, and then you have kind of very harsh undertones. So yeah, and then when it came to the remix EP,
Mhm.
a lovely Swiss Lebanese guy remixed it, and his name is DJ Plead, and he
Yes,
did an
shout out to
amazing
him.
job. Yeah, he's fantastic. I was so blown away by his remix. It was just so sophisticated, so elegant, and really respectful to my music. And yeah, really, yeah, amazing stuff. So yeah, he took it to another level, I think.
Okay. And any other woman that you think needs to be mentioned that, I mean, all of them have been really inspirational, and for you to document them through music as well and through jazz, I think it's brilliant. You are writing them in history once again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, there are lots of women on that album, but I'd also like to mention I'm actually writing a new piece of music inspired by Zaha Hadid,
Nice.
the Iraqi architect. So I've been listening to a lot of Iraqi music from the 60s and 70s of
Oh,
old. yeah, kind of yeah, pop music, which has been really really fun. I think they call it chubby music, chubby
Toby,
chubby.
yeah,
Yeah,
Toby.
chubby, yeah. So
Nice.
it's great. Yeah, so I'm doing that at the moment. Yeah, so dedicated to this wonderful woman, such an inspiration.
When is it coming out? Now you got me really excited.
Well, it's for a festival in Germany, and it'll be performed in the either the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd of July. So
Okay,
yeah, you have
so
to come to Germany. Sorry,
yes,
but
I
it
hope
would
we
be
can
really
travel by
cool.
then.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah, yeah, let's hope so. Yeah, because Zaha was amazing, and obviously exploring Iraqi music from that era is brilliant. I was just recently diving into it as well,
Ah,
because there were there were some like obviously it's a lot associated with TV as well, and the emergence of TV and how music was used within TV settings, and then dance and choreography within that. So I think it's a I'm really curious about what you will come up with.
yeah. Well, yeah. It's
Cool.
in the it's in the kind of beginning stages. I'm developing it, so yeah. I think it's going to be yeah a fun piece, definitely.
Nice. And just to ground ourselves between London and Bahrain, uh, can we very briefly talk about the jazz scene here, which you are really like shining through, and you've been a part of. And for those who don't know about the London jazz scene, and then perhaps talk about the scene in Bahrain.
Okay. So the London jazz scene, yes, it's a very diverse scene. It's always been a really interesting place to be for all sorts of music, and has always been very experimental and inventive and groundbreaking. It's always been there, but I think thanks to the recent press of maybe the last, I don't know, 5 years,
Mhm.
it's had a bit of a resurgence. So that's been really positive, and it's great to see that more people are being drawn to the music. And I think one of the things maybe is because a lot of jazz musicians, modern jazz musicians these days, like to incorporate their own experiences and the music they like. So it might be like club music or something, techno or reggae or something. And bringing a kind of a fresh take on jazz. And I think that's really um enticing younger listeners, and you get a lot of
Mm.
clubs where you see people dancing to jazz, young people dancing to jazz, which is really cool. um but I think what's really special is people, I think in the whole of UK, jazz musicians, they've been inspired by the spirit of jazz, but taking it in their own hands and telling their own story, rather than replicating American jazz, because that would be inauthentic. And I think we have a different voice over here.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in Bahrain, did you experience the nightlife and if there is a there's a limited maybe club life, but if you can
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah, well, I haven't really had the opportunity to go to any concerts in Bahrain, but I know that, music is everywhere. Even just in like restaurants or cafes, there's always someone performing. If it's just, a guy singing to some backing tracks, there's always something. And there's lots of cultural festivals where they have, the kind of the men singing, the pearl divers and stuff. And they do have like international music festivals, but on the actual island, I don't think there's too much of a scene, but maybe there is, and I haven't found it. But it's a very small place, so I don't know. I know that there's a very famous band who've come out of Bahrain called Flaming Gods.
Yes, yes, and they're based.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 they're amazing.
Yeah, yeah, they're very cool. So I think they're maybe the most famous band that have come out of them, out of Bahrain. But there are a few other jazz musicians. I think, yeah, I follow a few on Instagram. Apologies, I can't remember their names,
No
but
worries.
you know,
Yeah,
something's happening there anyway.
totally. Like I came across Majaz, who are brilliant. They're
That's one
Bahraini.
of them.
Yes,
Yes,
they're
yes,
really,
yeah.
I mean, I've seen them perform in Morocco and they were really powerful. So yeah.
Excellent. That's really good to hear. Yay.
Cool. Well, hopefully live performances will be back very soon and we can enjoy live music and free
Yes.
movement, whether physical in our space or long distance through traveling.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so too. I actually had my vaccination, yeah, last week.
Oh, wow.
So,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. So, I have a little bit of protection. So hopefully, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be part of helping to save the world from this
We,
terrible thing.
yeah, yeah. But at least you'll be able to travel now, right? Which is great as well. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. And just before we sort of depart from this moment, the future moment, other than your work on Zaha Hadid, is there anything else exciting that we should look forward to?
I'm working on my next studio album, which is the music that I was talking about earlier, inspired by traditional Bahraini music. And that's going to be with quite a few musicians from Les Saboteurs album. So it's kind of it's the music is more along those lines. So it'll be different to the previous album, different to Polymnia. Um, but I think there'll be more um, electronics incorporated and some field recordings. So when I went to that concert I was talking about in Bahrain, I recorded the whole thing on my phone. I had this little microphone I attached, and when I brought that music back, I put it into the computer and played around with it, and made loops and all sorts of things. So you'll hear some of that as well. So you'll definitely get a flavor of Bahraini culture in that album.
Amazing. Amazing. So a lot to look forward to.
Yes.
Yeah. Great to have you with me,
Yes.
with us, with everyone. Thank you very much. I hope everyone enjoys the whole lineup of the festival. And hopefully we meet at a real life festival soon.